Good morning. Welcome to Tuesday, March 28th, Stochastic NBA Strategy Show presented by Bet365. Joining alongside with me is Adam on this Tuesday morning. Adam, how are you doing? And how was last night's DFS slate?
Doing pretty well. Last night's DFS slate sucked. I was light on Milwaukee, went heavy on the Knicks. Looked like it could work out. Like Milwaukee was obviously good the entire day, but then the Knicks just sort of, outside of quickly, just died at the end. So, didn't work out, but whatever. On to the next one. Baseball starts in a couple days. Excited for that.
Yeah, I got pretty much my night was over when Jalen Smith couldn't crack 20.
Yep.
That kind of burned me. And then obviously the Harden news was pretty critical. Everyone just shifted to Maxey, which I thought was obviously the correct move to do. But that gave everyone to spend up the salary to get to Jokic. And then the Maxey Jokic duo ended up as kind of what you needed, I felt like, to win anything. So here we are on to another Tuesday, late March NBA slate. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hit that like and subscribe button for us. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're on another nice size slate today. We got 6 games, I believe. So should be fun to break down. We'll go ahead and get started with Boston going to Washington today. Boston is double-digit favorites. And the last game, they were without Tatum. And I expect him to be playing tonight, and it's a good Washington spot where this Boston team is obviously going to be intriguing for tournaments just because I don't think they'll have much ownership, but it's a good spot, especially when Tatum's on the slate. He can definitely erupt. How do you feel about this Boston team going to Washington?
Yeah, it sets up as a nice spot for sure going into Washington. Not much ownership at all coming into the Celtics, which, like you said, does make them appealing in tournaments. I get that they're correctly priced, or at least around there, but you still get massive upside from somebody like Tatum at 10-4, or even Jaylen Brown at 9,900, who his salary increased a bit because of Tatum being out last game. But, either one of those guys are capable of just putting up massive games for you, especially, in a good spot against Washington. So getting them at low ownership is pretty appealing. Not priorities, but, guys that you can use. It's always nice when, I've said it about Devin Booker a lot recently. It's always nice when you can be contrarian by playing somebody like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, as opposed to like, somebody's backup center. So that's always, a nice feeling being able to do that. The price tag on Smart's fine. Horford's fine. There's just guys that I like as contrarian plays, kind of just mixing one into a lineup here or there. There's not anybody that I expect to just be going super heavy on, though.
Yeah, it's just an appealing team across for tournaments. Not really much injury news. Obviously, Tatum being back will affect things, but just an appealing team for tournaments overall. Slip on over to the Washington side of things. Do you have any final thoughts on Boston before we move on?
Nope.
All right, let's go to the Washington side of things. They're a much injury-riddled team as they continue to be without Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma, a couple of their high-usage players. And I believe Monty Morris and Dan Gafford are questionable last I checked. So potentially could open up things even more for this Wizards team. But on top, you get Porzingis sitting at 9,300 on DraftKings, 9,400 on FanDuel. He's going to soak up as much as usage he can. Hopefully, he finds a way to play mid-30s minutes. We've seen him play low 30s minutes last game. Denny Avdija has picked it up of late, playing probably the best basketball I've seen him play offensively since he's been entered the league. But critical news with Gafford and Morris. We saw Delon Wright start last game, who was very effective. Comes in at a all right price tag at 5,400 and 5,800. How should we navigate the Wizards tonight for our lineups?
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky spot because obviously Beal and Kuzma being out opens up a lot of usage. You're potentially getting more minutes available if Morris is out or if Gafford's out. But it's also a tough matchup against Boston. Washington's 11.5-point dogs at home. So there is some risk where they just suck offensively in this spot. You don't have, you're putting a lot of pressure on Porzingis to be able to score here. There's not going to be much in terms of other offensive talent to take that pressure off of him. So you certainly could just see inefficient games from a lot of Washington, but that's sort of the risk that you have to take when you consider what the upside looks like, given that this offense really should run through Porzingis. We now have 4 games this year where Porzingis has played 4 full games without Beal and Kuzma. He has a 30% usage rate in those games. If this game's competitive, you're likely getting 34 minutes or so from Porzingis, if not more. He's 9,300. So at 10% ownership, certainly like that in tournaments. Avdija has been playing big minutes. He's up to $6,500, which is a hell of a price tag for Denny Avdija, but he's also likely to start and play mid-30s minutes. He's now played 4 games without Beal, Kuzma, and with Porzingis. He's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute, 22% usage rate, but also nearly a 25% assist percentage in 32.5 minutes per game. So you have seen him play better, take on a bigger role offensively, and really, I think, justify this price tag. It is still kind of scary paying that for him, especially in a tough matchup, but he has earned it in these situations, in the past. Whoever starts at point guard is going to look decent. If it's Monte Morris at 4,800, you're probably getting around 30 minutes from him. If he's out and it's Delon Wright, you're probably getting low to mid 30s from him. Corey Kispert's playing a ton. He's not a very good point per minute guy, but he is only 5K, only getting 5% ownership. If you wanted to use him instead of Avdija in lineups here or there, I think it's just a tricky spot overall because there is a lot to like from Washington in terms of guys that are reasonably priced and going to see increased opportunities. But it's also just scary because this could be one of those games where Boston doesn't even have to necessarily play well to blow out Washington. It could just be one of those games where Washington just scores 80 points.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. For what it's worth, news just broke. Bradley Beal's under investigation by the Orlando Police Department, having a confrontation with a fan for knocking his hat off of his head. The fan yelled at him saying, "You made me lose $1,300, you fuck." That's probably a reason why Bradley Beal knocked his hat off his head. But there you go. That's just breaking news right now per Real GM, the Orlando. There have been no police charges yet to be filed as of this morning. So keep an eye on that investigation and how that will proceed. Maybe Beal gets a fine from the NBA.
On the scale of Washington Wizards guards being under investigation, that one's pretty disappointing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Javaris Crittenton takes the cake there, right?
Yeah. Crittenton ultimately at the time, obviously Arenas was the huge story, but then Crittenton took it a step further.
Oh, yeah. Crittenton's enjoying a different type of life, I'd say, right now. But Bradley Beal should be hopefully just fine. But, I mean, what's your opinion on fans yelling at players like that?
I mean, one, I think it's kind of lame in general. Obviously, cheering for your team and stuff is different, but unless it's one of those if you're actually funny and you're heckling players, then cool. But like most people aren't. They're just obnoxious. So it seems sort of lame to me when like you're a grown adult, you're paying money to watch these people be extremely good at what they do, and then you're talking shit to them about like that they're not good at what they do. Like it's weird. But I also think that so like you should be able to sort of say what you want within reason. Like obviously there's lines that you shouldn't cross, but like Kyrie getting somebody kicked out of a game for basically saying nothing to him was pretty lame on his end also.
Well, that happened with the Nets or when he was in
It
Dallas?
happened the other day with Dallas.
Oh, really? I did not see that happen. Well, yeah,
I
it's
do also think every like basketball player should get one instance per year that they get to just fight a fan. I think it would fix the problem.
to fix the problem. Yeah, I think most fans are probably going to get fucked up, for lack of a better term. But yeah, it's very interesting. Especially it's like ramped up more with social media. Everything's a bit more amplified with these fan confrontations. Especially like the last 5 years, it feels like. But I mean, I just think that you just let the players be their entertainment more or less. But I just want to talk about an exciting new platform that we have is Chalkboard. You can find a bunch of free picks from all our personalities in there, hanging out day in and day out. They're hanging out throughout the night, sweating picks, sweating bets all together. It's free. Find the link in the description. You'll get a bunch of free picks from our team, and more importantly, our OddsShopper Premium tool, which is pretty revolutionary. And make sure to take advantage of that in the Chalkboard platform for sure. Let's move on to the next game. Hit that like and subscribe button. Cleveland is going to Atlanta. It's a pretty good basketball game in terms of players in it. We're going to get Cleveland with a 1-point favorite traveling to Atlanta. Cleveland's going to be led by Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley in terms of usage. I believe Jared Allen is questionable right now. And at these price tags, I like going. Mobley comes in at 8,600. Sorry, Mitchell comes in at 8,600. Mobley 81, and Garland all the way down to 7,400 on DraftKings. This Cleveland team, you usually just focus on their lead usage guys. Very rarely do we get interest in any of their secondary or bench players. But on this type of slate, Jared Allen being questionable could open things up. How do you feel about taking some chances on Cleveland today?
Yeah, really appealing spot here. Nice price tags, good matchup with Atlanta. 235 and a half total, 12 to 15 points higher than those first two games that we talked about. Only a 1-point spread, so that's nice as well. I think they look really good. Garland 7,400, as you mentioned, that looks great. Donovan Mitchell at 8,600 is a very good price tag as well. You're getting mid to upper 30s from both of those guys. Evan Mobley at 8,100 still looks fine. The price tag has come up a little bit, but you're getting backup center minutes from him now, which is more productive. If Jared Allen were to miss this game, you're getting Mobley starting at center, most likely, which is even better for him. So one way or the other, he's going to look decent. He'll look better if Allen is out. If Allen is in at 6,800, I like that as well. Getting low to mid 30s from him typically. All four of those guys look good. I think Garland and Mitchell are the two priorities of the group, but all four of those guys look good. Then, you get some tournament options as well. You get a $4,900 Caris LeVert, who is frequently playing around 30 minutes off the bench. You don't get the same sort of usage and production from him when both of Garland and Mitchell are in, but 4,900 is pretty cheap in a what should be a high scoring game, playing a lot of minutes. So I like LeVert at 6% owned. I think he's going a little bit under owned. We have his optimal percentage right now at 9.5%. You also have Isaac Okoro questionable. If he is out, that probably opens up minutes for Lamar Stevens and Chetty, which you're never going to be excited about those guys, but it's more cheap value that probably won't be too popular and has a path to success.
Let's we'll break down the situation if Jared Allen's out. Who do you think is like going to be like? Who are the starters going to be for Cleveland? And does anyone get a serious uptick?
If Allen is out and Okoro is in, I think Lamar Stevens starts in place of Allen. If Allen and Okoro, obviously not at center, but in that spot in the lineup. If Allen and Okoro are both out, I would guess they start Stevens and then either LeVert or Chetty.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep an eye on for potential cheaper players that you can maybe mix and match in your lineups. Nothing that someone super stands out, like you said, but could be worth some tournament flyers, but nothing more than that. Onto the Atlanta side we go. This Atlanta team just lost a close one to Memphis the other night. And Trae Young comes in at 9,100 and 10K on FanDuel. You get the 3-point bonus over there on DK. Seems like to grade out decent, I guess. DeJounte Murray, 7,600. these are the two guys who kind of stick out. It seems not getting much ownership. It's a tough Cleveland spot on the other side of things. And the rest of those guys, I feel like those minutes are no one plays consistently above 30 minutes. Capella might, but how do you feel about Atlanta, especially Trae Young and DeJounte Murray? And if you have any additional thoughts on some other players, feel free to share them.
I like the price tag on Young. It's obviously a very difficult matchup against Cleveland. It's not quite as difficult if Jared Allen is out, but it's still not a good one. But 9,100 is cheap. And, on the one hand, you're still only getting like 7.5% ownership because we have already talked about other underpriced guards as well, like the other side of this game. So you kind of have to keep it in context where, yeah, 9,100 is cheap for Trae Young, but 7,400 is also cheap for Darius Garland. 8,600 is also cheap for Donovan Mitchell. But I like the tournament upside that Young gives you. Similarly for DeJounte Murray, only 7,600. We know he takes a back seat typically when Trae Young is active, but playing 37 minutes probably at 7,600, only 10% owned, about a 15% chance of being optimal. I think both of those guys look like good tournament plays. If you want to take some chances on the center position, there is upside there. There's always risk because you never know exactly how many minutes those guys are going to get. But Capella and Okongwu are going to combine for 48 minutes, most likely. Capella's only 6K. So if you get that 29, 30, 31-minute game out of Capella, it's very likely that he exceeds a 6K salary. And similarly, if you get that like 23, 24-minute game from Okongwu, it's likely that he exceeds 4,600. So certainly not playing them together, but there are paths to success for both of those guys. And they've both been playing really well recently too.
Yeah, no, I think certainly there's multiple paths of success for those guys. Any interest in like the wing, like DeAndre Hunter, Collins, Bogdanovich, Sadiq Bey's been playing some additional minutes compared to a couple weeks ago. A Congo, whenever he's on there, feels like he's crushing. But is it too cute to go to any of those players?
I mean, you could go like Collins is giving you 28 to 30 minutes. He's 5,200. He has recently figured out how to shoot 3-pointers again. Hopefully that continues. They're both, I mean, you're getting 4% ownership, 6% chance of being optimal to Collins, 5% ownership, 8% chance of being optimal to DeAndre Hunter. They're guys where if you land on them as a last piece in, that's perfectly fine, but they're not guys that I would be expecting to get a lot of.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, hit that like and subscribe button. Looks like there's 365 people watching us right now. It gives us an opportunity to talk about our Bet 365 deal. It's probably the best deal that we've ever had with the partnership and promotion or presenting sponsor. Here's how. Bet $1 and get $365 in bonus bets at Bet 365. You just got to make a deposit. The bonus bets are just added back to your balance, and you just got to follow the terms and conditions and make sure one thing to make sure that you guys are living in or present in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. I mean, this is like as good of a betting offer it gets. It's too good. It feels too real, too good to be true at times. And don't miss out on this opportunity because it's going to go away very soon. And I don't know how soon, maybe tomorrow we have a different sponsor, but you never know. Just take advantage of it today. There's a bunch of NBA games we have a bunch of betting tools that you guys can use to make that bet and use those 365 betting bonus bets credit to take advantage of this offer. Producer Jordan will drop the link in the chat. Check the link in the description. And also, if you know anyone who has a gambling issue, make sure to call 1-800-GAMBLER. On to the next game we go. It's Miami going to Toronto, and Toronto is favored in this matchup in Toronto. For what it's worth, a fun fact, the NBA is opening their first ever NBA restaurant in Toronto this week. So interesting why they chose Toronto. Even though Toronto's an epic city, it's one of the best cities.
Yeah, I love Toronto.
Yeah, it's an awesome city for sure. But yeah, I believe they're opening a new restaurant there this week. I'm sure Jordan Klein's going to fly out and do his little TikTok review on that restaurant sooner or later. Yeah, if you guys didn't know, producer Jordan does TikTok reviews of LA restaurants in his pastime. So make sure to check that Toronto. If anyone's in Toronto, let me know how that restaurant is. I'm generally curious what the menu will look like. But here we are, Miami going to Toronto. Miami's got Jimmy Butler, 8,700, 9,800 on FanDuel, two different price tags drastically over there. 8,700 Butler looks pretty solid. Just another team not getting much ownership, I think. Bam at 7,500 is going to look appealing. Kyle Lowry going back to Toronto. He's questionable, I believe, right now. And man, sub 7K Tyler Hero. We keep touching on him and we keep chasing him, and it's just not been paying off of late. Talk about the Miami Big Three, and if you have any interest in any of those secondary players.
Yeah, I mean, it's just status quo for Miami. Hero, I think, started out really well the other day, and then if I remember right, sort of faded. But I thought I was actually going to get a good Tyler Hero game for once. But yeah, like he's still playing big minutes. He's only 6,900. There's nothing wrong with getting there. Jimmy Butler has been playing better recently. Struggled a bit last game, if I remember correctly. But you've seen a little bit more playing time from him. He's been playing well. Price tag is relatively expensive, but small forward, so you don't have quite the same level of opportunity cost at the position. I know somebody in chat had asked for sort of a quick explanation on that. It's just opportunity cost is just essentially what it's costing you to roster somebody at a position. So like normally it comes up when we're talking about centers because on FanDuel you can only roster one center. On DraftKings you can roster two. So and it's typically a position that has a lot of really good players. So if you're pointing like any individual center you point to, not only do you really have to worry about their actual salary, but rostering them is going to make it so you're not rostering somebody else. And so like if you have four really, really good center plays, saying like, oh, I'm just playing Jokic in all my lineups comes with a really high opportunity cost because it means that you're not getting that other really, one of those other really good centers in those lineups. So that's kind of a shitty explanation of it. But you typically have less of it at small forward because there's just less talent at the position. There's also more roster spots that you can fit them into. So it's not as much of an issue for Butler. Like if Jimmy Butler were $8,700 at small forward, he is a much, much more appealing play than if you were $8,700 at center because of opportunity cost, even though his price is the same. But he looks fine. Bam Adebayo, 7,500 at center looks fine. Still happy to get to all three of those guys.
Yeah, it's a appealing tournament team, in my opinion. Any interest in going to Max Strus, who lit it up last game, Caleb Martin, Kevin Love's 4,400. I just feel like those guys you can interchange and one of them can get hot, but it seems like it's kind of playing roulette with those guys.
Yeah, the bench, I mean, it does give you some upside. We saw Max Strus get hot last game and shoot the lights out. He's 4,400. Caleb Martin's 4,200. Lowry's 4,300. Like there's a path to any of these guys having good games. It's just really kind of like shooter roulette, like which one of these guys is actually playing well, because then they are likely to get a little bit more playing time also. So at low ownership, I don't hate trying, any of them, but I'm also not going out of my way to get any of them. Kevin Love at 4,400 also, like you're typically getting 18 to 23 minutes from him. I don't know the last time he played a fourth quarter, but at that price tag, like he can double in 22 minutes and give you a good score. It's just that the ceiling's relatively limited until they start playing, unless they start playing in fourth quarters.
Yeah, and I think it's something to it's a small enough slate. We'll see if any news develops, but like you said, he's the type of guy who can spike a quick ceiling in limited minutes that he just has in his bag. Let's go on to the Toronto side of things. This Toronto team, I believe Gary Trent Jr. remains questionable here. Will Barton is doubtful. He has been in the rotation of late and started a couple of games there, but he has been an absolute awful NBA rotational player this season. But up top, you get Siakam 9,200, Siakam 96 over there on FanDuel. VanVleet comes in at 9K and 8,900 on FanDuel. One of the more elevated price tags for VanVleet this season. Barnes 6,200, 7,700 over there on FanDuel. Very appealing. And Jakob Poeltl continues to play a handful of minutes, and by a handful, I mean sometimes in the mid-30s. 7K in a spot up against Bam on the other side. We'll see what those minutes look like. The Toronto team is always like the starters are going to be very appealing for me because of the minutes they potentially can play. How do you feel about these Toronto starters? They're priced up, but Scotty Barnes is going to command quite a bit of ownership, I would assume, at 6,200.
Yeah, it's like the pricing algorithm didn't realize that Scotty Barnes was on the Raptors or something. Scotty Barnes' price tag looks great. Like the dude's $6,200. He's around the fantasy point per minute guy. He plays for Nick Nurse, which means he's going to play 1 million minutes. It's not a great matchup, but you have small forward, power forward eligibility, so it's easy to get him into lineups. Just a really, really good salary on him. Everybody else more or less priced where they should be. There's nothing wrong with a $9,200 Siakam or a 9K VanVleet, but when you take a step back and kind of put that in the context where you're paying 9K for VanVleet when you could just play Trae Young, or you could pay less money for Donovan Mitchell or way less money for Darius Garland, it kind of illustrates why it's difficult to get to him at that price tag. Poeltl at 7K is fine. You get all the opportunity costs of the center position, but he is likely to play 30-ish minutes. Anunoby at 6,300. I think it's an interesting pivot in tournaments away from Scotty Barnes. Like, I think I completely understand why Scotty Barnes is getting 21% ownership at that price. And why he's getting more than Anunoby. I don't think he should be getting 7 times the Anunoby ownership at essentially the same price tag. But it's a situation where like I prefer Barnes, but if you need to save ownership somewhere and you also need somebody in that price range, just clicking OG Anunoby instead of Scotty Barnes is an easy way to accomplish that.
Yeah. Let's say if Gary Trent Jr. continues to be out, is it worth taking a flyer on like a Malachi Flynn or Jeff Dowden? How can we like assume Gary Trent's minutes get distributed in the second unit?
I don't think it's going to really open anything up. Last game you got less than 10 minutes from Flynn. Dalton was the one that got the quote unquote bulk of the playing time, but even that was 17 minutes excluding garbage time. Chris Boucher played 22 minutes. He's the guy that played the most off the bench. Will Barton hardly played, but like you could get a second half where he's doubtful. So you probably I assume you're going to get a similar rotation to what you got in the second half of that game. The bench rotation there was Boucher, Dalton, and Koloko. Chua didn't play at all. Maybe he does. Flynn didn't play at all. Maybe he does. But if you're going to bench guys, I think Boucher would be the one that you feel best about the minutes. But his price tag already moved up to $4,600. It's not like you're getting him at $3,400 anymore.
Yeah, Boucher is another different story over there at 6,100 on FanDuel. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because Barton's minutes are going to be gone and Gary Trent Jr. is potentially going to be gone. So potentially one of those guys could be viable, but it's a Miami spot, and those guys aren't the greatest point per minute guys at times. So we'll see what ends up happening. Any final thoughts on this Toronto team?
Nope.
All right, let's hit that like and subscribe button. Now I want to talk about NBA Bet Pro. It's an awesome new betting tool that we have for those of you guys interested in player props. If you guys don't have legal sports betting in your state, we have a new package for the over-unders on like potentially on Prize Picks, Underdog called Pick'em Pro. We just have all the player prop needs for you to be successful night in and night out. Take advantage of them. We got free trials for both of them. So find that link in the description. Check out NBA Bet Pro. Check out Pick'em Pro for whatever player prop needs you have in those over-under contests going forward. On to Orlando going into Memphis here. This Orlando team, very healthy yet again, always makes things a little difficult to go to. Banchero is down to 7,200, 8K over there on FanDuel. Wendell Carter Jr. comes in at 6,700. Fultz now sub 7K. Wagner 6,400. This team's just going to get some ownership here. And then the backcourt of Anthony and Suggs. Suggs is 4,500 and Anthony 6,100. But this team just like feels very healthy. No one immediately sticks out to me. There's some ownership going to this team, but I don't feel that excited to go to a specific Orlando player. How do you feel about the Magic tonight going into Memphis?
And nothing that looks great. Just some reasonable price tags at relatively weak positions. So you're seeing 15 to 20% ownership come into Banchero at 7,200 on DraftKings, 17% coming into Franz Wagner at 6,400, small forward eligible. Both of those are fine. You're typically getting low 30s minutes from Wagner. Sometimes he plays a little bit more. Banchero typically playing mid 30s minutes. Only got 29 last game, but that is unusual for him. So those are the two pulling ownership, and it's really just their price tags and positions. Wendell Carter, Markelle Fultz, always fine, but they're at positions where you have, very strong options as well. Fultz is only like $500 less expensive than Garland. You have a bunch of good mid-range centers that we've already mentioned. So any of those four are fine, but I think from a roster construction standpoint, just because of their positions, Banchero and Wagner are going to be the easiest to get to.
Yeah, I think that's like a great breakdown. I don't think there's any much else to say, unless did you have any thoughts on the bench?
So Jalen Suggs is not on the injury report, which for Cole Anthony at 6,100, like if he plays well and gets 30 minutes, he still could be good, but you can't feel as confident in his playing time with Suggs back, and the price tag has increased. So I think it's pretty tough to get to anything off the bench.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid way to handle things over there. For Memphis on here, John Morant's going to be out. And just for rest purposes this time, nothing too crazy. So with John Morant being out, Tyus Jones, 5,300, 5,600 there on DraftKings and FanDuel. Probably sticks out as the best value play on the slate. Probably the highest owned value play on the slate. But still, there's some great options to take advantage of. A Desmond Bane at 7,300 on DraftKings, 78 over there on FanDuel. And Jaren Jackson Jr. 8,300 over there on DraftKings. This Memphis team, we've been dealing with them for a couple of weeks before Morant came back. Without him, And now it just seems like a same story, different week now, with Tyus Jones just being underpriced. Outside of Tyus Jones, because he seems like a great play, how should we attack Memphis against Orlando tonight?
Yeah, Tyus Jones looks fantastic. Like, don't overthink that one. He's 5,300. He's likely to play low to mid 30s in minutes. He's in a good matchup. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy. Just suck it up and play Tyus Jones. The spot that I think is really interesting is Desmond Bane because he's been really popular typically when Morant is out. And I've played him a lot when Morant is out as well. Because clearly there's more opportunities for him. You get, you're losing Morant's usage. You're also getting Bane running as the backup point guard. So there's more assist opportunities. But so far, it hasn't actually turned into more fantasy production. In the games that he's played with Morant, Brooks, and Jaren Jackson all healthy this year, Bane's averaged 1.18 DraftKings points per minute. In 11 games where Jackson and Brooks have been in and Morant has been out, he's averaged 1.11 DraftKings points per minute. So it hasn't actually translated into more fantasy production, but it does consistently translate into everybody jamming Desmond Bane into their lineups. So I'm not saying like he's a bad play because he does like 1.11 fantasy points per minute for one is still good. And two, there's the upside for him to do a hell of a lot better than that. But I do think 33.5% ownership is probably a little high given all of the other good guards that we've talked about. It's not like he's 5K or something. He's still reasonably priced at 7,300. He does typically only play low 30s in minutes. That's just because Taylor Jenkins doesn't run these guys that many minutes. So there are plenty of alternatives to him in tournaments. I think he's going a little bit over-owned, even though he is a good play. Jaren Jackson, certainly a high upside guy at 8,300. He's been about a 1.3 DraftKings point per minute guy without Morant this year. You're getting more center minutes from him without Clark or Adams. So that makes him appealing as well. Dylan Brooks at 5K is fine. Aldama's only 3,900. Clearly, would be the first beneficiary if Jaren Jackson were to get in foul trouble. So there's a lot to like from this team. I think Tyus Jones is the clear-cut top guy, and then any of Bane, Jackson, Brooks are good. Aldama's, fine as a relatively risky but underpriced, tournament option. Getting beyond that on the bench, Kennard is up to 4,500, which makes it pretty tough to want to get there. Roddy's 3,300, probably not playing enough minutes to really matter. But it is a pretty appealing team to get to.
Yeah, I mean, John Morant being out should open up things quite a bit. And how many Grizzlies in one lineup feels like too many tonight?
I'll probably cap it at 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I capped Milwaukee at 3 yesterday, and I shouldn't have, but that was, I think, sort of a better spot than this because they had more like really cheap guys. There's no excluding Aldama, there's no $3,400 Javon Carter type guy where it's just like, oh, I don't even care that he's on the same team. He's so cheap. Like here, if you're getting, let's say you're getting all of Jones, Bane, Jackson, Brooks, I think they are expensive enough that like you're allocating a hell of a lot of salary to 4 guys that need to score.
Yeah, and I think a 3 cap makes a lot of sense for this slate as well. Hit that like and subscribe button. Shout out to our presenting sponsor, Bet365. I mean, that $1 deposit, at $1 get 365 betting credits. It's just unreal. Do not miss out on that one. Jordan's already dropped it in the chat before, but it's in the link in the description. By far the best promotion we might ever run. So do not miss out on that. It's just too good to be true. On to Charlotte, going to Oklahoma City. The Charlotte team is, I believe, almost double-digit favorites. I feel like going into Oklahoma City. Let me check the last time. They're 9.5-point underdogs going into Oklahoma City here. The Charlotte team, we got Kelly Oubre is questionable right now. Terry Rozier is going to be out here. Mark Williams is going to be out. I think they're going to be rotating with Mark Williams and Nick Richards for the rest of the season in terms of a center rotation. So we'll see how that actually maps out, but that's on the table right now as they'll be alternating games who starts. So Kelly O, potentially questionable. Dennis Smith Jr. up to 7K here, 6,500 over there in FanDuel. Grades out pretty well. Nick Richards, $4,700, is going to get as many minutes as he can, it feels like, with him and Kai Jones splitting it here. Kai Jones is 3K. But with Kelly Oubre questionable, if he doesn't play, it's a free-for-all for this team. I expect even guys like James Bouknight to be in the rotation. Bryce McGowan's will be in the rotation. Steve McCulloch's going to play quite a bit of minutes here. And then it's going to put all the usage on PJ Washington and Dennis Smith Jr. here. Talk to me about the Charlotte team, because I think it's going to be really important that we can nail the Charlotte team to give us a chance in tournaments.
Yeah, it's tricky because obviously they're really banged up. We did sort of see a similar lineup. You had Gordon Hayward last game, but you didn't have Kelly Oubre. You didn't have Terry Rozier. Dennis Smith Jr. started. He played 28 minutes. Looking at the rotations, there was certainly the potential for him to play more as well. He is relatively expensive at 7K. So you're only getting 9% ownership. And I think that's fair. Yeah, it's Dennis Smith Jr. stepping into a bigger role. He'll be probably around the fantasy point per minute guy on average, but you can't just throw Dennis Smith Jr. into the Darius Garland price range and expect him to be really popular, especially when you have Tyus Jones for 1,700 less, pulling a bunch of ownership. So in tournaments, that's fine. The opportunities will be there. If Oubre is in at 6,800, I would expect him to be playing a lot of minutes and getting a lot of shots up. He's not shy about shooting, and nobody else on the floor is going to stop him from doing so. If he's out, then, like you said, it kind of just turns into a huge mess where Bryce McGowan's is going to need to play a lot. Book Knight's going to need to play more. Teo Maladon probably plays a little bit more. Svi Mikhailuk, already started last game, played 33 minutes. I assume he's starting again today, so you only can get so many more minutes from him. But if Oubre's in, he'll look good. 4,700 for Nick Richards, 3K for Kai Jones with power forward eligibility. Creates a very interesting split there. We saw sort of what this looks like very recently when Mark Williams was injured, but you're expecting 28 to 30 minutes from Richards. You're expecting the rest to go to Kai Jones. It makes both of them look pretty good. 61% ownership coming into Nick Richards is insanely high, given that there are so many good centers on the slate. I think he's a very, very good value. But this just goes back to the opportunity cost conversation where if you're playing Nick Richards, by definition on DraftKings, you can only play one of the many other good centers on this slate. And if you just kind of think about what lineups, look like at the end of the night, you can 61% of the field right now is projected to box themselves into a situation where if two centers not named Nick Richards have huge games and Nick Richards is just good but not great, they can't win. And so that's sort of the trade-off there. Clearly a good value. I would expect to be getting him in cash. And I think he's a good tournament play, but I think he's also going over-owned given how many good center plays there are. Kai Jones is a natural way to leverage that. You play him at 3K at power forward, so you're not giving up that center position. You hope Richards gets in foul trouble or something, and Jones steals a few extra minutes. So not saying you have to play Kai Jones if you don't play Richards, but it does give you kind of an interesting way to leverage that Nick Richards ownership.
Yeah, I think that's a really good game theory tournament breakdown there. It's really going to be coming down to the Kelly Oubre news. If that's going to open up so many more minutes of usage, in my opinion. It's going to be a very intriguing team for tournaments, and we'll see how that ownership evolves throughout the day. If you guys don't have access to our NBA ownership projections, what are you doing? Just take advantage of our promotion score that's in the link of the description, where you can get 50% off any NBA package using that promo code. I want to touch about another promo code. MLB opening day is less than, it's about 48 hours away. And then we had a 50% off our MLB package. You can find that also in the link in the description. MLB is back is the promo code, and take advantage of that promotion. You guys want to try out our MLB product for that first month. Do not miss out on that. Should be a pretty fun MLB season right off the bat with 15 games right on opening day. I think it's the first time they've done that in quite some time. But onto the OKC side we go here. SGA, I believe, is questionable right now. He's 10K, 10-8 over there. If he's going to play, I'm going to love SGA in a great Charlotte matchup. And now if he's out, that's going to open up things for guys like Giddey, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort. I think that's going to be a lot of usage, obviously, sprinkled their way. We saw the likes of Pokusevski, I think, return last game. So keep an eye on what the...
He didn't play last game. He's with the team, I think.
He is with the team? Okay. He didn't play. He didn't play last game?
Nah, not unless I'm just missing his name, but no.
Okay. All right. Yeah, he's with the team. They've been hinting at him returning to the rotation. We'll see when that actually happens. But with here, talking about SGA and the potential situation with him being in versus out.
Yeah, if he's in, he looks good. The only sort of negative is that he is 10K, so you're getting essentially a correct price on Gilgeous-Alexander at a position where we've just named numerous guys that are underpriced. So that makes it, relatively tough to get to him, but still a very good matchup, still is going to project well, likely to play a lot of minutes as long as he's in. Josh Giddey at 8,200. Good tournament play either way. He's been about a 1.2 DraftKings point per minute guy, even with SGA in this year. If SGA is out, you do get more opportunities for him. But probably won't be like a huge priority either way because he is priced up a bit. He will get more ownership if SGA is out, and he probably should. But either of those guys are pretty appealing in tournaments. Jalen Williams at 6,700 has been playing a lot of minutes and playing well. We've really seen him step up as his rookie year has gone on. So no issues getting to him. He's pulling the most ownership on this team right now at 13%. Lou Dort at 5,400 is fine. I think that's like a reasonable pivot. The first guy I think of is Dylan Brooks at 5K, who's just getting, like twice the ownership. They're pretty similar plays. Brooks does get a usage bump with no Morant, but he's still contending with Jackson and Bane for usage as well, not to mention Tyus Jones. Lou Dort kind of plays a similar role for OKC. Don't mind using him as a pivot. I think they're very similar plays.
Yeah, I think keeping an eye on the SGA situation, I think the ownership will change drastically. This team's getting a lot more ownership on FanDuel just because of their pricing than on DraftKings, but certainly a team to keep an eye on with news. So maybe we'll get it before lock, but something to keep an eye on for your lineups. Any final thoughts on this OKC team?
So Isaiah Joe has typically actually been playing legit minutes off the bench, and he's only 4,400. Just keep in mind that's still extremely scary because one, it's OKC, and you never know what they're going to do at the bench. Two, if Pokusevski actually ends up playing, we don't know what that bench rotation is going to look like at all.
Yeah, it's Mark Dagnall on his bench, but Isaiah Joe, where you get the 3-point bonus on DraftKings, he can certainly find a way to pay up a 4,400 price tag against Charlotte.
The Hornets just signed whoever Xavier Sneed is to a 10-day contract, so I guess another body potentially that they have.
Who signed them?
The Hornets.
Oh, Xavier Speed?
Xavier Sneed.
Sneed. Oh, okay. I thought it's Speed like the
No.
streamer.
I still have no idea who he is either way. But
okay. I believe, yes, I think Speed is like the number one streamer, right, Jordan? Yeah, Jordan's a big fan of Speed.
This guy went to K-State. He's 6'6" wing, 25 years old.
He's been in the league before, I believe.
Grizzlies 2021, 2022, Jazz 2022.
Yeah, he's 25 years old. So I don't know if he's going to be in the rotation, but with him being called up, it makes me feel like Oubre is going to be potentially more likely to be out.
That was my first thought.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I wouldn't expect him to I don't expect him to really matter. I wanted to mention it more just because if Oubre gets ruled out, you start getting into how many bodies does Charlotte have conversation, and apparently now they have one more.
Yeah, so that's something to keep an eye on there. We'll get I'm assuming the Oubre news maybe by the 1:30 injury report. Now, hit the like and subscribe button here. Onto the final game of the night. New Orleans going to Golden State. I think it's a must win for New Orleans as they try to save their playoff hopes. I think they're in the play-in game right now. They took care of business pretty handedly in 2 quarters of play against that G League Portland team. But Brandon Ingram, 8,800, 9,200 over there. They've been playing a ton of minutes. It's kind of must-win territory here. Valanciunas 7,700, McCollum 7,900, Murphy 6,100. Talk to me about this Pelicans starters here because they're just playing a boatload of minutes and they look really appealing in my opinion just because of their minutes for tournament purposes against the Warriors.
Yeah, it's another pretty appealing tournament team because they're priced correctly enough that you don't have any crazy ownership. The only guy projected for double-digit ownership is Brandon Ingram at 8,800. He's been playing huge minutes. He's playing really well. He's also a small forward, so you just don't run into the same issues that we've been talking about at guard and center. But other than him, 8% ownership coming into Joval at 7,700, 7% coming into McCollum at 7,900, Herb Jones pulling 6% at 4,800. Another guy where you're never excited to play Herb Jones, but similar price point and a lot less ownership to Dylan Brooks, for example, another guy that you could use as a pivot. But the Ingram, Joval, McCollum pieces, the upside you're getting from those guys. They're all playing big minutes lately. We got another 30-minute Joval game yesterday, and he barely even played the fourth quarter, subbed out with 9 minutes and 37 seconds to go. You're just getting huge minutes from him. Obviously, it comes with the caveat that can change at any time, but New Orleans, like you said, they have a lot to play for now. They've been winning games with this center rotation where Joval plays the bulk of the minutes. I think at this point you have to be expecting him to get those minutes. That, again, it doesn't have to happen, but we've seen it enough recently. We've seen this rotation enough recently where I think now you kind of just have to treat it like he's going to play a lot. And if he doesn't, you move on to the next one. But it makes him look like a very high upside center option that's not very popular. McCollum works as, like a Darius Garland pivot. I'd certainly rather get to Garland for a few $100s less, but McCollum's still going to play huge minutes. He still has a big role in this offense. So I like getting to those main three guys quite a bit. And then, if you mix in some Herb Jones, take some shots on Trey Murphy's 3-point shooting, whatever it may be, it's a pretty appealing game. 233.5 total. The Pels are 8.5-point dogs, but if they hang in this game, you can expect that those at least one or two of those three guys are having big games.
Yeah, I think there's an appealing tournament team just for a lot of different implications. Minutes, kind of like almost in must-win territory to save their season. Yeah, I think that's just a recipe for players paying off their DFS salaries. Any final thoughts on the Pelicans team before we flip onto the Warriors?
Nope.
And do you feel like, before we move on, I wanted to ask you, does it feel like a Nance or Valanciunas type of game?
I mean, I think right now everything feels like a Valanciunas game.
Okay. Yeah, it seems more like he's solidified his minutes and it's been playing well. But in his matchup against the Warriors here, Curry comes in at $9,600. Klay Thompson down to $6,600. Draymond Green $6,200. No real injuries here to that really matter. I know Gary Payton II re-entered the rotation there, kind of took away some DiVincenzo minutes, some Anthony Lamb minutes, in my opinion. So he's going to be in the rotation. I don't know what the minutes will continue to look like going forward. Maybe he finds a way to play high teens minutes going forward. But this Warriors team took a heartbreaking loss against the Timberwolves last game out, but going to be appealing. Klay Thompson, 6,600. I feel like I can find a way to get there on three-pointers alone. Draymond Green had a great game last week against Dallas, kind of was all right against Minnesota. But Steph Curry, 9,600, always has tournament appeal. Just a team just not going to, I don't think we'll get that much ownership, but there's some tournament appeal. Jordan Poole, 5,900. How do you feel about the Warriors tonight in the nightcap?
Yeah, it's just like the whole team basically is getting 10 to 20% ownership, and they should. They're just cheap across the board. It should be a high scoring game. It's a good spot. 9,600 for Curry clearly comes with a ton of upside. 6,600 for Klay. He did lose small forward eligibility, so he's not quite as easy to get to as he had been on recent slates. But 6,600 is cheap for Klay Thompson playing around 34 minutes or so. Draymond at 6,200 is just sort of, what he is. You're getting around 32 minutes. You're getting somebody, 0.9 to 1 fantasy points per minute. He actually played 36 last game, so even more than usual. Poole at 5,900, playing 29 to 30 off the bench is a reasonable price tag. Even Kevon Looney at 5,200 is fine. So really there's like five guys on this team pulling between 11 and 18% ownership on DraftKings. Dante DiVincenzo is a sixth piece, is pulling 8% at 3,900 at small forward. Reasonable value there for sure. There's just a lot to like here from Golden State.
Yeah, well, I'm completely stepping stone with you there. I think it makes a very, very appealing game for the nightcap in terms of targeting for tournaments. Great total. A lot of appealing players with huge ceilings as well. For those of you who are catching the replay, click that like and subscribe button for us. Helps us go a long way. Adam, any final thoughts on the slate that you want to share that maybe we overlooked or you want to touch on right now?
I don't think so. I'll have my NBA notes article out shortly. I'll have my NBA Bet Pro video out some point after that. And then I'll be back for the deeper dive with somebody at 5.
Make sure to follow Adam throughout the day over there. You can find him in his Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. You can find me at Rinpack. Feel free to follow Stochastic as well at Stochastic NBA for all things NBA from us. Thanks so much yet again for joining us. Check out that Bet365 sponsor. Do not miss out on that. Have a great Tuesday. We'll catch you later.